This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so I will start from the historical background of SCCM. Okay,
Okay.
so SCCM is basically started in the year 1994, and the name of this product was SMS System Management Server. Okay, now
Okay.
after SMS 1.0, they released SMS 2.0 in 1999, and then 2003, SMS 2003 was released in the year 2003. Then they changed the name from SMS to System Center Configuration Manager in the year 2007. Okay, they
Yeah,
changed the
okay.
name from SMS to SCCM, and that happened in the year 2007.
Sorry.
Then SCCM 2012, right? Then
Yeah.
SCCM 1511. Okay, this is released in the year 2015. Then these are the three versions released in the year 2016.
Okay.
Then these three versions released in the year 2017. These three versions released in the year 2018. These three versions released in the year
2019.
2019. And 2019, they changed the name again. In the year
Okay.
2019, October, they changed the name from SCCM to MECM now. So this was the first name, the second name, and the third name is MECM. Okay. It
Okay.
is no more SCCM, it is MECM, Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager,
Okay.
in the year 2019, October. These three versions released in the year 2020.
Okay.
These three versions released in the year 2021. And
Okay.
last year, they have released three versions: MECM 2203, MECM 2207, and MECM 2211. That was released in the month of November. Got it?
Yeah, got it.
This is the latest and greatest version of SCCM at the moment.
Okay.
Okay, latest
Okay.
and greatest version. Understood?
Yeah, understood.
So that's the historical background of SCCM.
Okay. Okay. So any
Now,
difference, Kasif, from SCCM to MECM?
difference is more features are added. And the
Okay.
platform is same, the architecture is same. The only thing
Okay.
is the more features are added. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Just like Windows 10 and Windows 11.
Yeah, okay.
Almost similar, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But Windows 11 has a little more feature than Windows 10. Now,
Right.
previously we used to have these exams 243,
Okay.
sorry, 20-243, but they got expired. And then we used to have this exam 70-703. This is also retired. Previously, we used to take these exams and become SCCM certified. But
Okay.
currently, we don't have any exam from Microsoft. Okay.
Okay.
Now, there are three site servers in SCCM. You need to
Okay.
make a note of it. So there
Okay.
are central administration site, primary site, and secondary site. These are three
Okay.
different site servers in
Okay.
SCCM. Okay. They are not separate from SCCM. They are part of. So for example, this is your SCCM. In SCCM, you have central administration site, primary site, and secondary site like this: central, primary, and secondary.
Okay.
Now all of them needs database to store the data. For data storage, they need database, separate database. So primary will have a separate database, secondary will have a separate database, and central will have a separate database. Okay.
Okay.
Now this one is optional. The central administration side is an optional side.
Okay.
Primary side is a mandatory side.
Okay.
Okay. And secondary is optional.
Okay.
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 Now you have to have primary side. Primary is the main side in SCCM. Without primary, you cannot do anything. Okay.
Okay.
Primary is like the most important one. If you don't have
Okay.
primary, then you don't have anything in
Okay.
terms of SCCM.
Okay.
Now all these site servers can be installed on Windows Server. You cannot install them on Linux boxes or Mac operating system. They have to be installed on Linux Windows Server 2012 or greater than 2012, like 2012 R2, 2016, 2019, 2022. Is that clear?
Yeah, clear.
Now all these SCCM is what? What do you mean by SCCM? What is the functionalities of SCCM? Hmm?
You want me to answer this?
SCCM is basically to manage devices.
Yeah.
Okay. There are like thousands and thousands of computers in production environment. So
Okay.
in those thousands and thousands of computers, suppose you need to deploy applications, okay, or
Okay.
you need to deploy updates, okay, or you need to
Okay.
deploy operating system, or
Okay.
you would like to get the inventory of the devices. So who will help you to do that? It is SCCM who is going to
Yes.
perform these tasks for you. You don't have to manually go and install application or update or operating system. It will be SCCM who will be doing it. Okay.
Okay.
Now, so there should be a limit, right? How many devices it can manage?
Mm.
It cannot manage unlimited devices. There is
Mm.
a limit for each site server. So
Okay.
for central and primary and secondary, we have a limit. So central administration side, you can have maximum 825,000 devices you can manage in one central administration site
Okay.
hierarchy. In one primary site hierarchy, you can have maximum 175,000 devices to manage.
Okay.
And in one secondary site, you can have maximum 15,000
Okay.
devices. Okay. These are the
Okay.
limits to manage devices. So you see 175,000 devices. It's a big number, right? 1
Mm.
lakh
Yeah.
75,000. So one primary is capable enough to handle the load of 175,000 devices.
75,000.
Now we have to understand what is this central administration side, what is primary and what is secondary. So central administration side, it is an optional site server. Optional means this is not mandatory. You can have this or you cannot. You may or may not have this one. In production environment, it is not mandatory that you will see central administration side. In most of the almost 90% of the organization do not have central administration side. They
Okay.
just have primary site server.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
clear?
Yeah, clear.
So it is an optional site. Now it is an optional, then why we need it? Since it is an optional site, then why we need it? We need this only when this point is valid. It is required when there are more than one primary site server. Okay, suppose you have primary site server, let's say P1, just single. Do we need
Okay.
a central? No, we don't need central administration site. Okay, if you have just one primary site server, so we don't need that one. If you have more than one, for example PS1 and PS2, the moment you have more than two, more than one, then you can have a central administration side server. The central will be managing primary side server like this. It will be sitting on the top. Central will always be on the top. Then the middle section, in the middle you will have primary, and in the bottom section, what will be there? The secondary.
Second.
Secondary will be in the bottom. Okay.
Okay.
This is optional.
Okay.
So it sits on the top of the hierarchy, as you see. It is an optional. It sits on the top of the hierarchy. It manages primary side. The main role of central is to manage primary side, nothing else. Okay. Then point number 4 is it is required when there are more than one primary site. It needs database to store the data. So central is going to store the data in its separate database like this. Give 1 minute.
Okay.
Sorry. So it needs database to store the data. So which
Okay.
database? SQL database. Okay.
Okay.
SQL server.
Okay.
So it will store the data in the database. It
Okay.
does not support MySQL or Sybase or Oracle database. It has to be a SQL database. Okay.
Okay.
Then it collects data from where? Sorry. It collects data from
Primary side.
primary side database. So basically, whatever the primary site we have, let's say primary 1 has a database, then primary 2 has a database, right? So whatever the data primary site collects, it's gonna pass on to the database. It's gonna pass on to the central database like this. So data collection happens from primary side database.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
clear?
Yeah.
It does not interact with client machine. Client machine, to manage client machine, let's say we have to manage with 10,000 machine,
Mhm.
right? So those machines will be managed by primary and secondary, not central. Central will not be
Okay.
managing.
Okay.
It does not process client data. It does not support client assignment. It maximum it can have 825,000 client machines. Maximum it can have 25 child primary side. So let's say primary 1, primary 2, you can have more primary 4, primary 5, but maximum 25 child primary side. Okay, and it can be installed on Windows Server 2012 or greater.
Okay.
Clear?
Yeah.
So that's a central administration side server.
Okay.
Now then you have primary side. That's the main side. Okay, main side. Whenever you uh, you know whenever you have to deploy something, application or updates or inventory collection, everything happens from primary.
Okay.
Got it?
Okay.
So primary is a mandatory side. You must have at least one. Second, it manages client machines. Okay, so it manages client machine. So let's say you have 10,000 machines, it will manage those machines. It will manage secondary site as well. Secondary site, why we need a secondary, I will let you know later on.
Okay.
It is required SQL database. It needs SQL database to store the data. So primary side basically needs database to store the data. Okay. And from where it will collect data? It will collect data from devices, the client machine, plus the secondary side. Secondary side will also pass on the database, the data to the primary side database. Got it? It replicates the data to central database. So central administration side also has database. So it will replicate the data here. But this is valid only when you have central. If you don't have central, then this point is not valid. So this is valid only under the condition.
Okay.
Then support client assignment. Okay, the client will be assigned to primary side. Client will be taking the policy from primary side. Okay. Support 175,000 maximum client computer. One primary side can manage up to 175,000. It can have maximum 250 secondary side. And Windows Server, you can install it on Windows Server 2012 or greater. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's primary side. Now secondary is nothing but the site server for branch offices. Okay, understood?
Yeah.
Secondary is for branch offices.
Okay.
If you have one single location, you don't need a secondary site. If you have branch office, then you can have a secondary site. So how many secondary site you can have? Maximum 250. How many?
Okay.
250 secondary site you can have.
Okay.
So it's an optional site server. Why optional? Because if you don't have branch office, will you install secondary? No, right? When you don't have branch office, you don't install secondary side. It cannot exist without a primary. So for secondary to exist, you have to have a primary first. It is used to manage the devices in remote location, to manage the devices in the remote location, to control network bandwidth. It requires SQL Server Express or SQL Server database. So anything of your choice, you can take it, either SQL Express or SQL Server database. Generally, we use this one because this is free of cost. It collects data from client computers. It replicates the data to the primary side database. Maximum it can have 15,000 devices to manage. It does not interact with central, and it will install on secondary side. So you see, like this, you have headquarter in New York, 50,000 devices are there. So who will manage the devices in New York? Primary side, because primary side generally we install it in headquarter, 50,000. But you have branch offices like Mumbai, London, Chennai. Let's say 2,000 devices in Mumbai, 3,000 devices in Chennai, 4,000 devices in London. So we will install secondary side,
Secondary side.
secondary, and secondary. And secondary will not have its own policy. It will be taking the policies from primary. So primary, whatever the primary has, it will pass on to the secondary, and secondary will pass on to the devices in their locations. Got it?
Yeah.
So these are the site servers. So today we will discuss about the site server. I will send you the documents which will give you more information about the site servers. You have to go through that. Plus, I will send you the document for site roles as well. You have to go through them.
Okay.
Then tomorrow when we meet, we will discuss about site roles.
Okay.
All good?
Yeah, all good.
Any question before we wrap it up?
Yeah. So you told requires SQL Server Express or a SQL Server database to store data. Now we are using SQL Server Express as it is free version, right?
Yeah, for secondary you can use that one. For primary and
Okay.
central you can't use Express.
So in all organization they use the same
Yes, yes.
SQL. Okay. Okay.
Yes. Okay, I'll send you the
Yeah.
document. You can go through that
Yeah.
and the
Okay. Okay.
recording as well. Okay,
Yeah. Okay.
thank you. Bye now.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.